Shabbat Perek Chet Mishnah Zayin. Okay, we're continuing the discussions. There's a number of different Mishnayot about the minimum sizes of different items to be chayav in Hotza'ah. Okay, we're going to learn this Mishnah is the last Mishnah in Perek Chet. Then there's going to be a short break of 4 like non-sequitur Mishnayot. Then we're going to continue with this theme. It seems very important to Chazal, these minimum quantities for Hotza'ah. It's obvious to me that people were not careful about these issues. There were no Eruvim back in those times, at least not the way we have Eruvim in all the populated areas. And Chazal were very concerned. People had small things in their pockets. They carried things around. They had no places to store things. They would find them and keep them. So the Chazal had minimum measurements for all of these different items. It says the Mishnah, Cheres, a shard of pottery. What's the smallest shard of pottery in order for a person to be chayav, for it to be considered significant to be chayav? In order for you to place between they'd have to be big enough to place between patsim. What are patsim? Patsimim are like branches. They are beams. Amudim v'korot. So they would place them, osim shurot shel korot, they would make rows on the ground. You have a little space between them. So if you look when you stack beams, right? I found this on the internet. So they don't stack them one on top of the other because then they'll warp. So you always place a small. So that historically, they would never waste a piece of wood, a good piece of wood, in order to stack wood. They would take shards. They had different piece of cheres. They would put a different piece. So that's the Mishnah says. What's the smallest cheres that to be chayav on Hotza'ah? Enough that you would the smallest size that you would use them in order to stack beams. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. It's a very small cheres. Rabbi Meir says no. That's too small. That has to be big enough that you would use it in order to stoke. You have your fire, you would use it to stoke your fire. You would use anything. So you have cheres, it wouldn't burn. You have this little shard, so you'd have to be a little bigger. Rabbi Yossi says, no, those are shards. Those are pieces of garbage. It has to have a beit kibul. It has to be big enough that it can hold the revi'it. And that's a significantly larger shard of cheres. And less than that, you're not chayav in Hotza'ah. Okay, I'm Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir says, how do I know that it has to be lachtot ba'et ha'or? I can't prove to you that the size is the size of stoking coals, but zeichel ledavar, I have a mention in the pasuk, because it says in Yeshayahu, we'll see in a second the pasuk, v'lo yimatzei b'mechitato cheres lachtot esh miyakud. You will not find b'mechitato, katut, in its crushedness, a cheres, a piece of shard, lachtot esh miyakud. Let's read that in the pasukim. This is in Yeshayahu. So Yeshayahu is talking about, let me see exactly the pasuk. Lamed, Yeshayahu Lamed, Yud Dalet. Yeshayahu is talking about the following. Okay, Yeshayahu, in this small section, he's excoriating the Jewish people for not listening to Hashem. Okay, so he says the following. Lachen ku amar Hashem kodosh Yisrael. So says the Holy of Israel. Ya'an ma'aschem b'davar hazeh. You have despised this idea of meaning following the Torah and getting rid of avodah zarah. Vativtechu ba'oshek v'nalos. And you have put your trust in oppression and perverseness. V'tishanu alav, you relied on it. Lachein, therefore, yelechem avon, what is that? Keperetz nofel. It will be as a breach ready to fall. Niv'eh bechoma niskava, swelling out of a high wall. Asher piton lepeta yavo shivra. Suddenly it will come and its breaking will come in an instant. Ushvara kishever novel yevel yotzuin. He shall break it as a potter's vessel is broken. Meaning, this is talking about the Jewish people. The nation will become totally broken. Katut, crushed. Lo yachmol, no compassion. V'lo yimatzeh, it'll be so crushed. Lo yimatzeh b'mechitato cheres, you will not find in this crushingness, in this destruction, a shard, lachtot ish miyakod, in order to take fire from the hearth. V'lachsof mayim migever, to take water out of the cistern. Meaning, that if the idea is that if your country is like a vessel, it's going to be so crushed that when the vessel is crushed, when the cheres is crushed, there's not going to be anything left. It'll be so beaten down that there's not going to be anything left. You're not even going to have a shard that's big enough to take fire from the heart. Lachtot ish, lachtot is to stoke the fire, miyakod, from the hearth. Okay, and that's exactly what the Mishnah says. That's what Rabbi Meir says. How do I know that the minimum size of a shard is lachtot po ta'or? Because Yeshayahu says it's going to be so crushed that there's not even going to be a shard to lachtot esh. Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, what? I mean, it's a nice pasuk, but Misham Raya, you're going to get a proof from there? What about the rest of the pasuk? V'lachsof mayim migever. The second half of the pasuk is the shard is going to be so small that to take water out of the cistern. So maybe v'lachsof mayim migever. What about that? What about the second part? So the Bartanura says halacha Rabbi Yossi, because he's got a good raya from the pasuk as well. But the idea is that they're using this pasuk in Yeshayahu that we saw as an asmachta. It's an indication. It's not a halachic pasuk, but his description of cheres, meaning that there's something going to be so small, so crushed, that in order to stoke coals or to draw water, that tells us the smallest cheres. What is the smallest cheres that's still considered usable and meaningful? And based on this, we're going to see the next Mishnayot, some asmachtot from different psukim. We'll stop here. As always, comments or questions, email me. We'll dedicate the learning to the memory of my father, Rav Simcha ben Yitzchak Kalman. Have a great day.